Yeah, once again, thank you. I'm very appreciate for your question. Yeah, I'm trying to answer. First, I'm answer about from Savannah about needs NGO support. Yeah, actually in Sabah is in terms of technology and education is very sangat jauh lah. So what I'm looking forward is number one is very important is involvement youth, especially for the democracy process, also capacity building, and then create some economic for themselves to survive. I mean entrepreneur. That's very important. What I'm faced now. So I move to another question about local newspaper. Yeah, actually in Sabah we have local newspaper, Sabah Time, all controlled by government, and then also Daily Express, but all controlled. So for the independent newspaper, tidak compatible lah. Bila election baru keluar, that's a problem. So all the saya sudah nyatakan tadi, the youth, all the community living in the rural area only depend on utusan, berita harian, Metro, Sabah Time, yang kebanyakannya issue, the real issue didn't come out. So and then on the night before sleep, the youths, all the people sitting in the ruang tamu di rumah, tengok TV1, TV2, TV3, radio. So that's the difficult. So that's why I'm repeating again. I know youths in Peninsula especially have macam kepakaran like create a blog, do some writing. Yeah, we need that. Yeah, our help. Number 3 is autonomy for Sabah. Yeah. In terms of legal, I've referred to federal constitution. We have Sabah and Sarawak, but I'm focused on Sabah. Sarawak have specific terms tau dalam perkara 112. I think our lawyer is here, so in the federal constitution very clear about the rights. I mean, that's why I'm also question that, because many of you pasti dengar Sabah po Sabahan, native Borneo Sasi, apalagi. But all the slogan only coming 1 years before election. After that, tiada. Yeah, I'm 28 now, so setiap kali saya dengar itu 1 in the 5 years actually. Yeah. So meaning of autonomy. Nurul Izzah datang Sabah karena balik KL, kenapa? That's the autonomy. In terms of Sabah constitution, all the source, all the sumber, the land is belong authority by state. And then di peringkat local governments, the local authority is very powerful. Example like we have a native court. That's the authority for me in terms of legal. And then in terms of developer, kita ada menteri pembangunan sendiri. But the issue now is many of the minister in the federal is from Sabah. Why they cannot look about that? Maybe many of the questions say, minyak 20% dalam 20 perkara itu. Yeah, actually itu masih ada sebenarnya jika tidak berlaku cannot happen the double six, di mana the Datuk Donald Peter Majuntin mati bersama dengan Menteri Kabinet Sabah, and then sign the contract. So in terms of autonomy, yes, it's my personal view. Yeah, autonomy for Sabah is still there, but I don't know. Selepas election tiada yang cakap, but dekat-dekat election ini the issue is playing. Karena cakap inilah autonomi ini, autonomi itu. But after, do you have a power? Hilang. That's the harap dapat menjawab the question lah. And then another one is question from the first question yang memberi soalan pertama tadi about the Allah, So I'm also don't have a specific answer because that term of Allah is using in Sabah, in Sarawak, but cannot in Peninsula. So I'm also still doing some research why that. Adakah kerana I don't know, tapi bagi saya I'm agree about we must think about must look beyond from that. That's why we are here. Saya tidak guna saya datang dari Sabah, buang masa, buang duit kalau tidak melihat kepada ini lebih jauh. So now what I'm look is now kita membiarkan politik itu desain apa macam mana negara ini, but didn't before this didn't change. Young people can speak out to give suggestion, the concrete suggestion, because we are the next generation in this country, in the beautiful country. It's my comment lah. And then for the alternative, I mentioned earlier during the presentation, before this young people didn't have a chance. Sebenarnya jika dilihat secara keseluruhan, before government also many activity. Example, government anjur satu aktiviti hari belia, kemudian angkut belia dari Sabah, Sarawak naik Asia, pergi Putrajaya. Itu adalah satu aktiviti. I didn't blame him, but for the beyond daripada itu, yang melihat macam mana negara ini, what is pendapat dari belia, macam mana memastikan negara ini aman. For us, this is the first time we are talking about Malaysian identity. Before that, terima rebate, ambil BRIM, dapat 200, SIM pelajar, only the materials, but in the future, nothing. So another one is in the I go back to situation in the grassroots. I don't know in Peninsula, but in Sabah is I mentioned earlier all the, sedangkan line telefon pun main sangkut-sangkut, apalagi internet, all that thing. So because all the youths, I believe very creative, dia akan tulis dan akan publish di Facebook, di mana-mana blog. So keadaan di sana so that's why for us chance for speak is very limited. Dan bagi saya bertuah because Malaysian Insider jemput saya untuk cakap dan explain to share you all. That's my answer for that. So saya akan kembali lagi untuk menjawab soalan seterusnya. I'm giving to my friends to answer. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm still glad everyone's still here. First and foremost, the issue of me beginning my speech with the name of Allah, the Most Gracious and Most Merciful. Realistically, to me, that's just a personal preference, and by no means that it means that I'm imposing my religious views on the rest of the people. And to me, some people might say that this is a break in communication, basically putting that barrier aside. However, if you're mature enough to understand that Allah means God, then you're mature enough to understand that that's how I profess my belief to a certain extent. That's that. I agree with the first situation, or basically suggestions, as okay, the gentleman is not here. It is beyond race. It is beyond the skin color. As I've mentioned earlier, it's about class, and we've had this extensive discussion during lunches. It's actually class war. GE13 is practically and realistically class war. You know, you've got the low income who mostly lives in the rural area, and then you've got the urbanites who are forming the large chunk of the middle income group and the upper income group. And it's not just that. I think we shouldn't stop at class war. We've got to see this issue from the perspective that not everyone is exposed to the same thing as we are. You know, I believe it's wrong for us to impose our judgment, our own exposure to the rest of the world, or to the youth that you see on the street. You know, because we don't know their circumstances. You know, the rest of the good people in this room, we all have had the opportunity, the chance to expose ourselves to a lot of different things. Socialism, a lot of political ideas, a lot of religious beliefs, a lot of differing opinions. However, to go to the ground and say, you should start seeing things the way I do, to me it's a bit premature. Before that can happen, we've got to address the knowledge deficit that exists between one peer group to another. Before we can start telling this youth or telling the younger generation of this country about what to believe, what not to believe, what system is right for you, what system is wrong for you, it's imperative that movements like Kami Belia, Undi Malaysia, that goes out to reduce that knowledge deficit. I mean, I believe personally Undi Malaysia is doing a good thing, and my consti is actually doing a good thing, you know, about reducing that knowledge gap, about the constitution, about the rights of the people in this country as a voter. Now that's question number one. And then when you talk about platform alternatives, of course, no one in their right side of mind, and in this room especially, want everything to be spoon-fed. You know, want everything, oh, we're doing this because we need to be spoon-fed. Interestingly, if you notice, the young generations of today, a huge part of it believes that they are entitled. You know, they are entitled to everything. You know, oh, I'm entitled to A, I'm entitled to B. Oh, I need this, I'm entitled, this is my right. You know, a lot of people are actually confused between what is right and what is entitled. And when you talk about platform, the reason I started Academy Belia with Datuk Saifuddin Abdullah is because of that. It's because of the realization that I cannot wait for the government to actually, okay, you know, wakes up one day and decide, here, a platform for you. You know, for you to talk about and discuss about knowledge issues and discuss about things that matters in the world or things that matters for our country. You know, that's why me and Datuk Saifuddin and a couple of other people decided to band together and say, you know what, let's just start this. Let's just start Academy Belia, where everyone and from each side of the political spectrum or from each side of religious belief can just come here in a safe environment to speak. But in order for, Steve Johnson actually said, great ideas are actually a collision of small ideas or small in a safe environment. You know, slow hunches, that's what he said. You know, in his presentation, he said slow hunches. Now, what Tabitha has said, what Pang Jofan has said, what my good friend has said, these are all slow hunches. Slow hunches that has been brought together to talk about Malaysian identity. That's the great idea. How do we define Malaysian identity? And then, of course, there's that question of datukship. I overheard one of our good friends in this hall said it's feudalism. I agree to a certain extent. It is feudalism. And datukship is actually a form of recognition. The same way a teacher would make you class monitor, the same way a teacher would call you, oh ni budak pandai. It's a recognition thing. It's assigning values to whether or not let's not go whether or not it's true that a datuk has benefited the country, but let's just talk about at the philosophical level. Datukship is a form of reward, recognition. Is it still relevant now? I personally do not believe so. There are other forms of recognitions. There are other ways to recognize an individual contribution, an individual's contribution to the country. Why do you have to assign them specific names? Bono doesn't have a Sir or Datuk behind him, and he does great things. Bill and Melinda Gates doesn't have Tan Sri or Toh Puan, in front of their name, and they have done a great deal of things. So I believe there are other ways to recognize someone's contribution to the country. Autonomy of Sabah and Sarawak, being a peninsula, having grown up here in Malaysia, I believe Sabah and Sarawak should be autonomous. I believe Sabah and Sarawak should have a hand in to a certain extent, crafting their own policy. Because personally, after having been to Sabah and Sarawak and talking to the people there, Sabah and Sarawak's political landscape is just way above Peninsula. It's different, it's an entirely different feel, and by that alone, I've prematurely deduced that even the society needs in Sabah and Sarawak is different. So it's not fair to actually discuss policy matters, especially about development in Putrajaya, not realizing or not consulting people of Sabah and Sarawak, because they have very different needs. Over here in KL, we're concerned about traffic jams. Over there in Sabah and Sarawak, they're concerned about roads. Over here in KL, we talk about, kenapa kena bayar tol mahal ni, hari-hari kena bayar RM4. Kan? Over in Sabah and Sarawak, they talk about electricity. They talk about access to education. They talk about access to schools. So that's my take on the relationship between Sabah and Sarawak and the Federation of Tanah Melayu. Now this lady, Lavinia, said, when I went to and started speaking in English about the East Coast people and whatnot, what that incident taught me was, there was this deep belief system that when someone of your race or someone of the likes of you at a superficial level talks in a language foreign to you, they are not one of you. That's the belief. When I started speaking in English, even when I started speaking 2 words of Chinese that I know, Ni Hao Mang or Ni Chao Shima Ming Se, immediately the response was from some of my Chinese friends, oh, you know how to speak Chinese, huh? For the Malay friends would be, oh, betul ke ni? You see, that's the belief, that deeply rooted beliefs that when you don't speak the same language or when you speak the same language, you are one of them. And people of the East Coast, especially in the rural areas, and I've actually talked about this when I was 17, going for my JPA scholarship interview. They asked me, how do you inculcate reading and of course the mastery of language in the rural areas? I said, that's not too bad. Just take out 2 billion ringgit every year, subsidize 2 books to every house in a kampung, get the JKK to play a more proactive role, to hold a kampung gathering and say, let's discuss about the books that I've given to you. It's really as easy as that. Of course, my JPA scholarship application got revoked because of that. But That was the thing. The key is to expose them. Unless you're willing to expose them to English language or a third language, especially English, we're talking about English. Unless you're willing to expose them about English, you're not going to be able to address that fear of English. Go to any rural areas, especially ask the 50s, 60s year old, and they will say English adalah bahasa Inggeris, bahasa penjajah. Go to any rural areas and they will say, kalau belajar bahasa Inggeris, maknanya kita tak cukup Melayu. Kalau menguasai bahasa Inggeris, maknanya identiti kita terhakis. Bahasa Melayu semakin lemah. Now, all these are real. I'm not simply saying stories, but these are the people I've encountered. Even when I was growing up, I was 10 years old, speaking English, whatever it is that I know of, what little English that I know of, and I have teachers coming up to me and say, kenapa cakap bahasa Inggeris? Kenapa tak cakap bahasa Melayu? You know? So, how do we help English mastery in rural areas? There are two ways. Number one, that book club idea. You know, get JKK to play a more proactive role. You know, if only Malaysia can go to Ulu Langat and start talking about, you know, English, the importance, having English versions of their forms. Why can't the government do this? Why can't the state take a more proactive role? And then, of course, we need a lot more discourse. We actually need a lot more things like this, where everyone have different political beliefs, everyone has different ideas on how Malaysia should move forward. But we are all here today to discuss and come to a common ground. Now, this discourse is very important, because this discourse allows you to chip away from this negative perception that kalau belajar bahasa Inggeris, kita kurang Melayu, ataupun kita kurang Malaysia. Kurang Malaysia lah, awak ni kurang Malaysia kalau kuasai bahasa Inggeris. And then when you're talking about knowledge exchange, there are two ways, and these are partly incorporated in what I'm going to do with Academy Belia. Number one is the exchange program, where we practically go there and then get someone from Sabah and Sarawak to go here and see how different the landscape and the societal needs in Sabah and Sarawak. And then, of course, the exchange of expertise, like Nasri has said. You know, people here, they are more well-versed with administration, they're more well-versed in terms of capacity building. You know, exchange these people. Only through exchange of knowledge and discourse we will be able to move forward. Thank you.
Okay, great. Excellent. And oh yeah, Tawita.
I have a. Let's not waste this. Okay. I just want to continue on from where Rahman left off about English, and I mean increasing the level of English. One really interesting thing in rural Sarawak is that to be able to speak English is a sign of being educated, which is a good thing. People really, rural Sarawak, the people in rural Sarawak, they really take people who can speak English really highly, view them really highly. But the problem is, you know, we get secondary school students that come out from graduate from Form 5 not being able to speak a proper word of English. I mean, they can write, but whatever that the teacher, I mean, whatever that they memorize from the textbook, they just vomit it out lah. That's, you know, that's the case. But they do not have the confidence of speaking English and things like that, and which that would be something that we need to address on, for Sarawak, is to be addressed on an education level, because we get English teachers who are not good in English to teach English, and the reality is that because of that, the level of English has just gone down. Sarawak used to be a place where you go everywhere, you can just speak English. Safe. It's safe to speak English. But because of what is happening, unfortunately, this I will want to touch when I talk about autonomy. the whole level of English has just gone down. We went from a governance where English is the official language to English is a chapalang language. We can't write English properly. So I think putting good English teachers in schools, that is very important. Which brings me to the autonomy of Sabah and Sarawak. As a Sarawakian, I personally feel that it is very important for Sarawak to be to have complete autonomy, especially in the field of development and land and education, because I have no problems with sharing healthcare. I have no problems with sharing defense and all, but Sarawak, cultural-wise, needs-wise, we are completely different from Semenanjung or Sabah even. There may be same characteristics between Sabah and Sarawak, but we are actually different. So I believe in complete localized governance for Sarawak. And with that, when we talk about the lack of English teachers, we can easily address that because we have our own education department. In that sense, we have our own education ministry. We can directly address that. That is why autonomy for Sarawak is that important for me. And just that the issue right now is that, of course, I do not want to name names today, but we do have a dictator in Sarawak lah. So we really can't do much about that. But otherwise, having complete autonomy, having autonomy in Sarawak has done wonders. If we look at a more positive way, if there is a positive way of looking at it, yeah, there is. Okay, we develop at our own pace. Now, not so. Within the past 10 years, that's not the case. But previously, we develop in our own pace. We control what gets to be built, what doesn't need to be built. But now I'm not talking. I shall refrain from talking about that. We all know. But so yeah, that's why I besides to me, the only thing that needs to be shared is healthcare and defense, because that is one thing that why we form Malaysia for, is to share resources, and defense is one thing that we can share most. And in terms of our resources, of course, we can share. We can, as a nation, we share together. It's just that we should be in control of how we want to share things. So, and also, which also brings us to the issue of local newspapers. We do get West Malaysian papers there. We have The Star. We have we have The Sun. Sing Chiu is also in Kuching. But the thing is, if you have a national newspaper, many local news cannot be covered. It's hard to cover local news. And even in Sarawak itself, we have our own local newspapers. They cannot cover small towns like Betong, like Kapit. It's hard for them to cover into remote places. So much so that now, thank God for Facebook, man. What the local people in Betong area do is that they have a page called Betong Update. So instead of relying on newspapers going into the area to post updates and news, the local people, they post their own news. So I still think that local newspapers are important because news have to be reported in that sense. So not to say that there is complete segregation from West Malaysian news and East Malaysian news. It's just that there are local news that are important that has to be shared out. And in fact, it's a good idea if we can send our newspapers over. You know, knowledge exchange. That's what just now, you know, during Rahman mentioned, knowledge exchange is not only just having forums like this. It's not just having exchange programs, but even sending, as simple as sending our newspapers here and your newspapers there. You know, there is such a knowledge exchange. We can address again the issue of knowledge deficit. That is also another thing that's been popping up in this discussion. You know, newspapers is a very important tool, but now with websites coming up, things are a lot easier. It's not as hard as it used to be. We don't have to ship like container lots of newspapers. You know, we don't have to. I mean, news portals are worth noting. Let me see. Anything else? No, but I just want to make a quick comment about the Datuk Ship thing. I think Datuk Ship really throw away our name. I mean, once a person gets the name Datuk, say Datuk Jofan, I would not call him Jofan anymore. He'll be forever called Datuk. So until he gets a new title, then he'll be called Tan Sri. Nobody will remember his name is Jofan. So actually, really, is it really that necessary? I don't think so. You know, unless somebody wants to forget their name. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. So, let's get Dato' Jofan Pang to say something.
Okay, so Dato' Jofan is going to speak. So it sucks to be the last one because everybody answered everything that you want to say already. So I'm just going to raise more questions. From what Tabitha said, she said, I really thought I didn't ask this question because she said, wouldn't it be like dangerous for Sarawak to be completely autonomous, because currently it seems like they're already completely autonomous with a dictator, you're already saying, and wouldn't it also further separate Malaya from Sarawak if you give all the powers to Sarawak alone? Like will cause even more of the problems that we're talking right now, like how we are separated and stuff like that, and there'll be less integration in a sense, except the part where you talked about newspapers. But the rest of the autonomy is back to Sarawak, and you're just like running your own country over there, and you know, and yeah. And another thing is, you talked about news portals throughout, but that's really just the minority of the. I don't know if it's minority, but there's just still a large portion of people from the from rural areas who has no access to all these news portals, Facebook, or all these kind of things, and they only rely on the radios that they listen to. Probably. I'm not sure if Radio Sarawak and all that kind of thing is enough for them to have alternative news, which is an issue that has not been tackled. I'm just raising more questions from what she said. But okay, to answer the question that was directly thrown at me, which nobody else has answered because it's my question, is it's about the history, whether it's truth or discourse. Of course it's not truth. History is definitely not truth. But right now what's happening is they are preaching it in schools as if it is truth. And nobody else questions it because we are just raised that way. History right now is that way, and nobody remembers anything that is that should be remembered, like the few things that I talked about just now, which actually makes you more emotionally attached to where you grew up from. We just know about the general history of what the people in power wants us to know, and I think it's not enough. And sometimes it creates a very big bias. It creates a generation of people who are ignorant towards another side of the story, which I find very, very disappointing, because people just believe what they are taught and they never question because it's just like that. So yeah, it should be a discourse. There should be like, now there's only one source, so it's really convenient for the government or whoever is in power to remain it as one source, because there's no good reason for them to add another source. Why would they want to come out with an alternative story that would actually spoil their own name, right? So I think we need more alternatives now. Right now we have stuff like Pusat Sejarah Rakyat by Fahmi Reza, where he teaches, where he comes out with lots of interesting newspaper articles from the past, and also other little snippets of history that we would not know if because generally we were not taught, and nobody wants us to know about these things. I know there are other things, other hipster events where they talk about, where they share about this alternative history. I think we really need more of those, and we really need to make it even more mainstream, so that really it coming back to the Malaysian identity, I really think that we really need to understand where we come from. If not, we will end up like our neighbor somewhere down there who does not have any soul to their culture. So yeah, it's very important. Yeah, so that would, I hope that answers the question. It should definitely be discourse, and more sources and more sources of history, because it's really interesting. It's just not one like side of the story, and it's just something you memorize throughout, and it's just the whole truth, and there's no point. It's not that dry history. Yeah, and okay, hope that answers that question. And I think I'll go on to answer a bit about the datukship, because I think datukship is true. We talk about feudalism, and it's also about class and rank, and it's also about recognition. Yeah, it was about recognition. It was about celebrating some personalities for what they have done. But right now, I think we have almost. I mean, yeah, we celebrate some people who contribute to Malaysia. Like, but what else does it do than celebrate these personalities? And generally, actually, those are only the few that we celebrate. There are datukships that are on for sale now. I mean, then it defeats really the purpose of it. It's really back to feudalism and class. But the thing about it is, it's probably one of the only few things left that the Malay rulers have power over, really, during their birthdays. And I don't think it would be abolished or anything in the future, because it would really raise another very, 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 very sensitive issue. So yeah, I think it's defeats the purpose. Right now, it defeats its current its initial purpose, but I don't see it being abolished in the near future or anywhere near future. Yeah. And what else can I talk about? Platforms to speak, right? Somebody talk about that, right? Yeah, I think there are a lot, but like what we do in Undi Malaysia and Lower Bureau as well, where we do a lot of, we try to encourage DIY things. So we're not a structured organization. So anybody who wants to run anything, who wants to run a discussion, who wants to invite a speaker, can just invite and use our platform and just do it. It's like what Jabba said. It's like a very good sandbox for us to run on, and it's I think it's very interesting to encourage this kind of discourse. But the thing about it is, it's good here, but I always have this question in my head, and of course, being 20, I haven't figured it out yet. How do we bring this kind of discourse and this kind of discussion to the rural areas as well? Because I really see a very big divide, like what they say, knowledge deficit and divide between the rural and the urban people. And we can go on doing this, but if we don't, and then we can keep empowering ourselves, but if we don't bring this to the rural areas, the gap will be widened, and it would not be good as well. It will be widened even more, and we have even more to catch up. So it's really another question that I want to throw out to everybody, because I don't have the answers to, but it is a question that it was a problem that I identified that I think it's very, very important for us to look at. So really the rest of the things I think has been fully answered by the three of them 3 times already. So I don't think I have anything to add on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank all the speakers, the panelists today. I just got a few words to say. It has been a very interesting afternoon. Very small crowd, but a very interesting afternoon for young voices. You're going to hear more from them in the future. I take what Nasri said. He might be in Sabah, but his blood is Malaysian. I think that's a very powerful statement to make. That in '63, I don't think they ever imagined someone would have said that so readily. That our blood is Malaysian. Okay, I take what Tabitha said. She comes here with a discontent in her heart that she has to tick a box that says done line. That's the box I have to tick too. It's like you can't bureaucratic convenience. This is true. Rahman Hussein talks about values, common values, rather than dwell on our differences. And if not anything, common values brought this country into being in 63. There was common values, they found common values. Were they nudged by the British? Probably, but they had more commonality than differences. Right? Mr. Joe Van Pang spoke about history and heritage. Also, something we have to learn from, and the fact that there's many narratives to history. One of the things that we want to do in the Malaysian Insider is to look at all these threads of history. Sabahans, how did they view the formation of Malaysia? How did the Sarawakians who were independent on July 22nd, is that right? July 22nd, viewed it. Going forward, why weren't we Malaysia August 31st, 1963? Why was it September 16? Story for another day. But all four panelists, I think, shared a bit of what the future of Malaysia will be. We need more discourse, more understanding, more listening to each other. And I thank all of you for being here today. Listen to these four wonderful young Malaysians. And thank you for all the questions that you brought up. And I'll see you at the next forum. Thank you very much.